gypsies and spiritual wanderers. This is Mocha Gypsy, and I have another story time for you about a supernatural mystical experience I had during a meditation recently. Meditation has many benefits. It's calming, reduces stress, connects you to source, and even help you manifest desired outcomes. But I recently discovered that meditation can also make you see dead people. And it turns out I met someone very, very interesting. I was never really heavily into meditation. It was something that I practiced only once in a while. However, I've discovered the amazing work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I've been practicing his Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation. For those of you who are not familiar with him, he's a doctor who severely broken his entire back and refused having extensive risky surgery, and instead completely healed his entire back with the power of his mind in connecting to the quantum field. And he's been teaching people to do it ever since, and he's written several books including Becoming Supernatural. So one morning recently, during the portion of the meditation where we are instructed to bless the third eye chakra, the pineal gland, so that the spiritual veil be lifted, suddenly I saw a man right there in my living room by the front door looking at me. And it wasn't a vision. I mean, he was actually there. It was just that it was like his reality was just superimposed on mine. So he was actually in my living room. So he was tall, he was strapping, and very athletic, almost like a bodybuilder. And I couldn't see his face because there was a bright light shining behind his head, almost like a halo. But I was able to see the shadowy outline of the shape of his head and his face, and I could tell that he was very handsome, with high cheekbones and a straw jawline. And I was able to see that he wore a white shirt with gold embroidery and white tight trousers. And I knew that those trousers were tight because he briefly turned around to open my front door, and I had a peek of his backside. And I saw that his physique was even more impressive than I first believed. So the front door, when he opened it, it opened to my street, but the sky was brilliant white and gold, and the sun was out, and the sun was gold. It was like metallic, shimmering metallic gold. And and it was just a beautiful thing to behold. And he stayed by the side of the door, and by the way he was standing, it seemed like he wanted me to walk through it. Since I'm not going to go off with just anyone from the spirit realm, I quickly asked, "Who are you?" And the moment I asked, he just disappeared. And I was just and I was just back in this reality again. After the meditation was over, I tried to figure out who this entity was, and the meaning for this visitation. And the moment I wondered with girlish glee if I was like, somehow maybe this was a vision, and I was like seeing like my future husband or something. But I quickly came to my senses on that. All right. So I was just going to write him off as an angel since he was so physically perfect and beautiful. But I thought about what he was wearing. He had on a Cuban shirt, a white one with 2 stripes of gold embroidery running down his chest. And from that, I suspected that he was an actual person who was either Latin or Caribbean. And that this is a person who just had to be connected to me in some way. And the only person who I could think of was my grandfather, my mother's father, Hamilton Ian Frankson. Hamilton was a wealthy businessman in the Kingston area of Jamaica who owned a successful busing company. He and my grandmother Adlin had 3 children together, and my mother and her siblings wanted for nothing. Unlike most children in Jamaica, they had everything that they needed provided to them. Easily and effortlessly, they were living a really good lifestyle. But all of that came to a tragic end on September 8th, 1962, when Hamilton was murdered in public by a crazed madman who ambushed him in broad daylight. As he was getting into his car, this man impaled him with a machete. People in town witnessed in horror what had happened. And once apprehended, this madman admitted to murdering Hamilton simply because he was jealous of his wealth and good fortune. And he was only 42 years old. So this story had another layer of tragedy because since my grandparents weren't legally married, Jamaican laws at the time dictated that all of my grandfather's money and assets transferred to his brother. And just like that, my mother, who was 12 at the time, and her family had their lifestyle drastically changed for the worse almost overnight. My grandmother struggled financially and decided to move her and her children to the United States for a better life. This is also the story of how I became an American. So now here I am, pondering if who I had seen was Hamilton or if it's someone or something else. I was ready to dismiss him as, this possibility that it was him, simply because of the physique of the person who visited me. Right? As I mentioned before, this person was super athletic and built with big muscles like a bodybuilder. My grandfather died in the 1960s, during a time when gyms weren't yet a thing in Jamaica back then. I've only seen like one image of him, one picture of him, and that was a painted portrait of him from the collarbone up. And chances are that, he had a slightly pudgy body, typical of successful middle-aged men who lived a life of comfort during that time, So, but either way, I needed to check to make sure so that very morning, I reached out to my mother on WhatsApp. I didn't tell her what happened right away. I just sent her 2 photos that I found through Google search. The first photo was of a Cuban shirt, similar to the one that this person was wearing, and a photo of an athletic man wearing a Cuban shirt who had an athletic build. But, this guy's build was not as big as the person I had seen. So I then asked her if her father wore shirts like in the first photo, and if he had a build like the man in the second. All right, thinking that maybe that he may even be smaller than that guy. So it took her a whole half an hour to get back to me, and the tension was building up in me like crazy. Okay, then she finally replied, and she said, "Yes, my father wore shirts like that, and he was athletic, but bigger than the man in the second photo. He had the same body type as your uncle when he was into bodybuilding." So it was Grandpa Hamilton confirmed. I asked my mother how he acquired a body like that before going to the gym or taking steroids was a thing. And she told me that he was heavily into playing a bunch of sports, very physically active. And he was particularly fond of playing cricket. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea, if there was like a celebrity I can compare his physique to, it would be like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or even LL Cool J at his biggest. It was very, very similar to that. So from everything I gathered, my grandfather Hamilton was like a true alpha male, an alpha male indeed, in every sense. He was wealthy, a provider, a leader in his community, competitive, and physically dominant. So I came clean to my mother and told her that the reason I asked all these questions was because I need to confirm that her father visited me while I was in meditation. When she was like kind of silent, but she took it in stride and didn't sound shocked or anything like that, to my relief. So now I knew that it was Hamilton. And the next thing I needed to figure was the purpose of his visit. In my living room, he opened the door as if he wanted me to go through it and possibly together with him. And I started to fear that maybe he came to take me to the other side. But then I thought it through that was likely not the case. Because when people die or near death, it's usually someone they've known and loved, who guides them over. And I never had the chance to know Hamilton since he had been dead for 60 years. So, with death being ruled out, I had to pay special attention to what I've seen in that moment, to what I recollected. He was wearing white and gold, and he opened the door leading to the outside to a beautiful sky that was brilliantly white and gold. And I got a sense that he wanted me to go through the door. So it seems to me that, there will likely be some sort of big transition in my life that he may be helping me with. And I have a few thoughts about what that transition may be, but I'll keep that to myself for now. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments of what you think this all could mean. And by the way, I've since added my grandfather Hamilton to my ancestor altar to honor him, and we'll see how that goes. So yes, Joe Dispenza's blessing of the energy centers meditation may open the portal, lift the spiritual veil to put you in contact with those who have departed from this life. So if you want to try it for yourself, his meditations can be purchased on his website. There are also some of his meditations available free on YouTube. My best advice is not to pressure yourself to see or experience anything, because I've had other mystical experiences that didn't entail dead people that were just as rewarding. And that's probably, stories for another time. But, when it happened for me, I was relaxed, totally in the moment without expectations, and in a state of being receptive. So you can set an intention to have an experience with someone who passed before you begin, but just remember to completely let go as you are being guided through the meditation. For those of you who dare to venture, share your experiences down below. So, this is Mocha Gypsy signing off. Like, comment, and subscribe, and be blessed.